Hi, Warren.
Jasmin, how are you?
I'm excellent. How are you?
Could I have a bone to pick with you?
Uh-oh.
I was told that you reckon you sit there nodding, I talk the whole time and I never stop talking. And that's you who does that to me, but anyway.
That's partly true, but I think most of the people who watch us regularly will know that we're all good nodders. But that's what we love. We want to hear more from you, Warren, so it's not a problem at all.
Oh, what can I say?
Can we believe it is 2022? I feel like 2021 was a lovely indication of what is to come. And yeah, we're going to be able to have a good chat tonight. Everyone's just kind of saying where they're from. So welcome from Perth as well, Brisbane, Shark Bay. What's it like there at the moment? Beautiful. Well, I guess we just want to get started with, just a little bit of an introduction as it is a new year. January is a month that many people set their intentions for the new year, and we have lots of goals that we set. But it's just a time that we wanted to come together and just really address, what's to come. And I know that you are going to be, it's on your heart, Warren, to run a series around the art of war. Is that correct?
You bet.
Yeah, so we kind of changed things up, guys. We were going to run something else, but it was just a spur of the moment. And Warren, as is very based on his intuition, he wants to run a series on the art of war. So I guess we'll just open up with a little bit about a reflection on 2021 and 2022, and why have you chosen the art of war as a series, and why is it so important to know about this time?
It came about because it was a very casual comment I made to someone just the other day, yesterday. I just said, God, I said, people really need to learn the art of war. It's a great book by Sun Tzu.
Yes.
And just the whole strategy. I mean, Donald Trump's a very good example of someone who knew the art of war. And I said, man, most people are trying to deal with governments and people trying to jab them and take their jobs off them with reason and being nice to them, and just don't understand the art of war. It's like someone about to come in and shoot you and you sit there and smile at them and say hi, or be reasonable with them. You don't be reasonable. So we just had this discussion. And then I was talking with my kids and then with this client, and I mentioned this to one of my clients. And then she said to me, you know what? She said, that's exactly what I do in my business. And that's why I'm the most in demand person. And we got talking about it and how we both like that book. And I said, God, I should run a bit of a series and see if people are interested. And if they're not, we won't get many turn up, or they'll get bored and leave. But I said, let's just give it a shot, because that's been the one reason why literally people leave me alone, Jasmin. Like, as you know, I go into pro-jab debates and talk and everyone shuts up because they all know we don't want to upset the feral man,
Everyone can definitely nod at this point. Yeah, absolutely. So has anyone by any chance actually read that book? If you want to put in the comments below as well, because that'd be really interesting. And I know if someone's not a big reader, you can obviously listen to the Audible as well, which is sometimes a really good way in this time with all the stuff that's happening. Yeah, okay. So Warren, can you give us a little bit of a reflection on 2021? I know also you did a really great post about 2022, and something that really stuck out was how you're going to really have to have a lot of courage this year. And I guess with the art of war as well as knowing how to protect yourself, to find that inner strength, as well as how to deal with all of this coercion, bullying and discrimination that's happening in the world. So can you give us a little bit of a reflection on 2021 and also what you kind of said about 2022 and what to expect?
Yeah, well, 2021, as I mentioned, I mean, the last 2 years has been a lot of the test phases to get people ready and conditioned and compliant. That's how I saw that. It's just getting people used to complying to government directives. And I have this personal theory that some of the directives are meant to be stupid to see if people would comply with them. And if they didn't comply, they know they'd have to do a different way. But I think what governments have safely discovered spectacularly well is that by and large, their population will comply with just about whatever they tell them, like no matter how stupid it is. And phase two, as I see it, is stepping it up, getting people, my view is eventually aimed to take everyone's money, create a totalitarian kind of dictatorship system where everyone's microchipped and tracked based on, and yeah, as Drew just put there, all welfare based on deception. So I think that's where it's heading. That's my feeling. I think that's where they want it to head. And the biggest war is in the mind. This is where I think people have been waiting for World War III and nuclear fights, but this is it now. We're in a war of the mind, of EMFs, frequencies. And generally, I mean, I can remember 2 years ago going to my Pilates, and when I first did it, I could not even do, like, I used to watch in horror in the classes what people were doing. I'm like, this is horrendous. Like, I was the tightest. They do stuff with their abs, I would just feel embarrassed and stupid. And I had a really good instructor who just said to me, she just went very slowly with me. Today I was in a Pilates class. I've been working with a world-class instructor who trains doctors. And I mean, there's these women doing insane exercises. I'm easily keeping with them, and I'm ahead of most of them doing stuff. But it took me 2 years to get to that. So what I really said about 2022 is that you want to get in the habit of pushing against the norm and being able to be different against the tide. Like, if you go swimming in the river, the easy thing to do is sit back and let the tide take you. Yeah. Swimming with the tide is constant work, it's tiring, and every now and again you'll grab a branch for a break. But this is a year to swim against the tide, and there's going to not be really much rest apart from a quick rest to do that. Right in WA, we've got mask mandates, we've got this mandate, we've got jab mandates. I'm deliberately going into places which I know are going to kind of challenge me more and more, just to get myself used to being the different one. I mean, my best one I was happiest with, I went into a pub that was enforcing on everyone. I was the only one that walked in there without a mask. And I could see everyone was really not knowing what to do with me. And I was getting challenged like just about by every staff member, and I'm calmly reminding them and going through the exemptions. And I stayed there for quite a couple of hours, and it was good for me. I came back thinking, good, I survived that. And it's just, the art of war is you've got to train yourself to get strong, and mind is a muscle as much as getting my body is strong. And that's why I'm comfortable pushing back. I'm comfortable trolling now. I'm comfortable getting into debates with people online. And, I'm comfortable standing up to my family. And I'm in a family of pro-vaxxers, doctors in my family, and not one of them give me shit about it. And in fact, they all support my choice. But it would not be the case if I was in any way weak. I can tell you now. They were trying to give me shit about it months ago, and they quickly stopped.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's talk about that courage and your mindset and building that. I mean, what are the practical ways to do it? When you have been told from your job that you have your mandate, you've lost your job, you may have to go and think of another way to create money and wealth. There's a lot of stress, and there's a lot, and I guess before we even go out into the workplace, Warren, or and we go out into the world, we have to deal with our family members, as you just said. I'm finding more and more people are having more problems within their family than actually being out there in public. So let's just talk on that, because it's really important right now. Can we survive this? Because if we don't have our support of our loved ones, it's even harder to live right now.
Yeah, look, I remember I was fortunate enough. I was telling people I grew up in a very strong church. And for example, in Florida, one of the reasons that Florida's free, it wasn't free like 21 months ago. They enforced the mandates very, very hard in the beginning, but the churches stood up very strongly, and even a couple went to jail, and they quickly backed off because the churches stood up and the spiritual leaders pushed back immensely. They even told their congregation, you do not follow these stupid laws. And they very quickly changed it, exempted all the churches. And once they exempted the churches, they started exempting everyone else. And now Florida's the gold standard. But Florida didn't magically wake up and go, oh, we're going to treat our citizens well. Why not? No, they were like, we're going to jab our citizens. We're going to mask them up. We're going to lock them up, whatever. Yeah. And the people said, oh, no, you don't do that. And found that the difficulty that I'm noticing what you said, like, I remember one of your family members, you told me that, really sunk home to me, Jasmin. You said this family member did not want to do it, and they had their spouse saying, just go and do it, And I had so many situations where I hear that happening, like, just go and do it. Like, why do you have to be so difficult? Or then I want to keep your family and support and loved ones. And a couple of analogies that come to mind that help me with that. Now, for my spiritual background in a really good church, which taught me about the microchipping, mark of the beast, cash society, and basically the fact that the original Bill of Rights and Magna Carta and all the documents that we revere today in the freedom movement came from churches and spiritual leaders who pushed back and insisted on these rights and were willing to die and were willing to basically, be different. And the original Bibles actually taught that. Like, when you go to the King James and Geneva Bible, they're powerful books. They teach the secrets of pushing back and doing what's right by the higher law and not by, ungodly or bad governments. And that's the Geneva Bible is one of my favorite books, and the King James Bible, they both do that. But in 1975, Dr. Gail Rippinger, a PhD, wrote a whole book thesis where she showed in 1975, there was a systematic attempt to water down the Bible's strength and they actually started producing translations everywhere. And they did that because they know that if people have got a moral code and spiritual books and values, they'll push back. If people have no values, no standard, no boundaries, and are all over the place, they cannot stand up. And that's what you're seeing today. You're seeing a generation with no inner value, no sense of who they are. Like teenagers, like, who am I without my nightclubs? Like, I have friends saying, I'm just going to go and get jabbed even though I don't want to because I want to go to clubs. But that just shows their identity, as Stephen Covey in 7 Habits of a Highly Effective Person, is in who they are to their peers, who they are to their friends. How can I travel? How can I go to university? Who do I fit in now? If I don't do this, who am I? I'm no longer part of the social collective. And fitting into the herd is such an important nature of our 6 values as humans, our human needs. And so it's one of the things that helped me or 2 things, was something that church upbringing, Jesus actually said when he was challenged about his family, he said, who is my real family? And he pointed to everyone around him and said, it's those who do the will of my Father, that's my family. So who's my real family? You are, Jasmin. I mean, I give you shit, and we do, but you're my family. I love you to bits. I have many of people around me who are my family. I have people in our Global Wealth Club, they're my family. We are like-minded. My natural family, I take care of because it's the right thing to do. But when they started trying to put things on me in the past, I cut contact and ghosted them, and until they apologize and pull their heads in, and most people won't do that. The other one is in the Bhagavad Gita, the Hindu Bible, is a whole discourse between King Arjuna and the shaman Krishna, and where Arjuna was literally in kind of conflict. Do I go to war when many of these people are my relatives, my family, my loved ones? Because he was trying to bring in a new order of religious peace and fair common law and a better society for India. But his family, who relied on the old and were all part of the old system and wanting to keep the kind of greed and the old structure, hierarchy, went to war with him. And he didn't want to war with them. So Arjuna, in the end, said to Krishna, should I just give up and go along with it? Because I just want to be a man of peace and go and live in the forest. And that discourse changed my life, because I had a little bit of a conflict with that too, because I spent all my life, because many people are business people who become shamans or learn spiritual truth. I was the reverse. I was a missionary and spiritual teacher and lived many years simply, who got into business, and so I went that path. And so I had that grappling too. Do I maybe just go into the wilderness, live off grid and go into peace? And what Arjuna was told was, Krishna said, that's just really a spiritual lingo to be a coward. He goes, it's one thing for me as a shaman to live in peace, but you're a king. You're a leader. Your job is to do what's right in your duty. You have to fight, O king. He said, which could mean you got to kill all these fucking motherfuckers and put them out of picture. This has to, in other words, get these people out of commission if they're going to stand in the way of freedom, fair play, truth and progress, and in the common law good. It's a little bit like someone's about to come in and kill your partner. You're not going to sit there and wave at them. You're going to defend them. So he said, as your duty is to just say, no, you will not do this. You won't do this. And I swear I know then, but that's deliberately to kind of show the strength of energy you got to actually have. So Krishna said, keep in mind that, whatever you believe in reincarnation, Krishna said they can always recycle in a new body. He said, in any event, that's just what houses them. And if you're going to get in the way of progress, wipe them out and a new civilization will come up. So that helped me, because war says that there will be casualties of war. There will be, and you just got to not make sure that if you fight, you're fighting for your kids. I mean, I've got a close friend and I love her because her partner was going to give in, and she just said, don't you dare give in. You will not give in. I'm fighting for you and I'm fighting for my kids, and you're going to do what's right for you. If you want to get it, so be it, but you will not do this because you're being coerced. That's not what our family is about. And he listened to her. And then And war, and that's the kind of mindset, you know, the art of war, that willingness to say, we're not going to basically go against that truth, whatever that truth is.
Yeah.
And yeah, so that helped me a lot, that particular one.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and if you look back in history, and I know you're going to share quite a bit on, you know, like Abraham Lincoln times and times when coloured people couldn't go into certain stores and there was a lot of slavery. If
Yeah.
you actually look into history, I would say that really history repeats itself, right? And there are lessons that we need to learn as a collective. And we're going through what we're going through because as a collective, we have allowed this to happen. We haven't learned from the past. And there are so many people, as you said, that don't have a purpose. They're not connected to a purpose. They're just another number. They're just treated like another transaction at work. They're easily replaced. They don't have a sense of belonging
Identity.
in this world, you know, and especially spiritually, I guess so many people have been pulled away from it. Bibles have been taken out of school, chaplains have been taken out. There's so much spirituality and so much godliness that is being removed. And that's why we're really in a place of suffering. So could you talk a little bit about the history, about the time of Abraham Lincoln and slavery and how the coloured people suffered so much? Because I think it's actually really relative to what's happening now overall for everyone globally.
Well, yeah, the thing that I found fascinating, which I didn't know until some years ago, when I was studying one of the great reformers of the Great Awakening in America, which was Charles Finney, evangelist who really many believe is the reason the Bible Belt is what it is today. You know, extraordinary impact and the whole culture change of America. You know, pubs shut down, nightclubs, and the reason was people didn't want to go to them. You know, they just wanted to go to church and do their duty and be in community and worship God together. And I mean, that's what my son said to me. He goes, I understand what you mean. I said, mate, I'd go to nightclubs as a teenager and in my 20s, and I hated them because church was miles better. I was in a good church. We'd dance, we'd sing. I had spiritual experiences and I was taught the truth and how to fight back and how to find an identity. So I found my identity, you know. And the thing is with what happened with Abraham, what I learned with Charles Finney was Abraham Lincoln. He was very pro-slavery at one stage, not so much pro, but he didn't become the president until he was in his 50s. He had a failed marriage. He'd had numerous failed attempts in politics. So when he got in, he was more known for being a very good politician. You know, he kind of knew how to work diplomacy, and he refused to take on the issue of slavery because he knew that if he did, as he said, that it would erupt in violence. Because you got to understand the American economy at the time was very dependent upon basically bringing in Africans on ships and chaining them up and getting them to work for free. You know, so it basically made a lot of money for this company. So many plantations, many businesses, you know, whites especially made a lot of money with their black slaves. And so it was a norm to have black slaves who were basically wearing chains. I mean, that was like the norm. And the good slave owners didn't put chains on them. They were kinder to them, but still. So Finney and the churches started to push Lincoln to do something about it. And he was to write in letters. And Finney says in his autobiography, his first 9 letters to Lincoln were ignored. And he actually called prayer meetings across his whole churches and says, we must change the heart of the government. And he felt this breakthrough in his heart. And then Lincoln wrote back to him to arrange a meeting. And Finney persuaded Lincoln and won his heart. And Lincoln's words to him was, he actually said to him, I know it will cost me my life and most likely, and it will erupt civil war, but I'll do what's right before God, because you're right, this abomination must be stopped. So Lincoln took it on. The banks actually tried to take him on, and the governments in the South, they blocked his funding. You know, he couldn't get funding for the war, so he issued his own currency against the Rothschilds. And that's why he paid for his life, many believe. So the point was that there was a huge pushback back then because people had their commercial interest. I mean, in the 1960s, I remember when I was in Charleston and in many of these places in Memphis back 6-7 years ago with my kids, we were like watching astonishment, like reading signs about like Woolworths, like, you know, if you're coloured, you couldn't walk into Woolworths, it weren't allowed, or maybe a certain part you'd be segregated away to. If you were a coloured person on a bus and a white person came on, you by law had to stand up and give your seat to the white person. There are certain parts you couldn't sit on. Yeah. Women couldn't vote at one stage. I mean, it's mind-blowing to think of it now, but these were real stuff. I can remember in the 80s when I was around, I mean, Aborigines were treated terribly. They openly used to be called all kinds of names. I remember I had friends who used to tell me they go gay bashing down the local toilets. I'm like, what? why would you do that for? And he goes, oh, no, it's fun, you know. And this was going on until the 80s. Now, we look back now and say, how could this be? But we're doing it again.
Yeah.
And and unfortunately, you could just imagine imagine if social media was around the 60s. You know, people would have been quoting and someone would have said, this isn't right. And, you know, imagine if coloured people were writing on social media and then they were getting shut off by the censors and they would have been, you know, like, you know, they would have been, like the censors would have been said, oh, no, anyone who's coloured can't be on Facebook. I mean, and then there would have been probably people like you and I may have been courageous enough to speak out that this was wrong, but we know that if we did, we'd get blacklisted. And then if I'm a celebrity for Hollywood, I'd be cut off from all my movies. We haven't learnt hardly anything, you know, we really haven't. And I think that getting that mental strength to speak out what's right for the sake of what's right distinguishes someone who's a true leader and who's got a sense of identity. Because someone with a sense of identity just says, no, 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 no. This is wrong. This is fucking bullshit and this is wrong. And it doesn't mean I'm going to run yelling at the government because that's not the solution. The issue is the government only have the power that the people give them.
Exactly.
And yes, I'm passionate about it because we've got to be strong. We've got to be strong in our language. You're not going to win someone over who's trying to shove a jab in you by saying, well, you know, and giving them some signs, just saying, how dare you want to put a needle in me, you absolute lunatic, you know?
Yeah, exactly. Because there's so many people out there who are just, you know, all against the government, and absolutely they are completely going with the globalist plan right now, and we know what's happening. But majority, right, Warren, you talk about building courage when you're going out in public, because in Perth at the moment, I'm sure in other states as well, the mask mandates are back, as you said. We've got all these other mandates happening. Vaccine passports have just started to come through in the last week. So I don't know if everyone else is experiencing that at the moment. But when you're going through this, you know, change and transformation, and you are having to let go of these things, I'm sure that there are a lot of people who have been strong up until this point that will cave. And I think it's a really good time to encourage those people, the ultimate reason as to why they need to stand strong when we need to.
Yes, and people need community. You see, the biggest reason that people are caving in is, like that friend said to me, I don't want to lose my sense of community and my friends and to stand out. Now, I taught my kids to stand out from young. That's why none of them, they're all doing their own life, because from young, I taught them, but if you hang out with other kids, you'll just become like them, end up getting jobs and end up, you know, being mediocre. I said, you're better off to live separately and learn to be loners and be comfortable about it. And I think, but for people who need connection and family, I mean, I know for you, Jazz, you probably found a lot of support joining the Global Wealth Club, becoming part of our family. Absolutely. And like, you got to have like-minded community, and that's why we're building do our free webinars. That's why we started our Awakened Church, because I am absolutely certain, as Ken Wilber says in his book, Religion of Tomorrow, the world needs a new, higher consciousness, awakened church, religious, spiritual system that teaches people moral duties and that, but with a conscious, inclusive perspective, and not the old bullshit way that's basically been done, where it's like, oh, no, I'm in this one, I'm in that one. I mean, I use the Bible as my primary book, so I love the Bible. I think it's like the best book ever. But I also love the Bhagavad Gita, the Hindu teachings. I read the Buddhist writings. I've studied the Mormon. I love Joseph Smith, so I revere his works. You know, so it's getting back to understanding the spiritual principles of our ancients, because in the Hindu society, for example, the spiritual teachers and priests were higher in status than the kings, and it's still the same today. All kings and politicians that lead have been chaplains or spiritual leaders they work with. George Bush had Billy Graham, you know. Clinton even used to go to Graham every now and again. I mean, a great, great teacher. Donald Trump had Franklin Graham, his son, who I love Franklin Graham. I think the guy is an absolute hero, you know, and there's guys over here as well, you know. And one of the reasons, you know, I know people criticize them, but I know the Hillsong Church well. I've spent years with them. I mean, they've got a lot of good people in that church. And I mean, Scott Morrison does get a lot of input from the Hillsong Church, and people give him crap. But you actually listen to him, he's unlike Albanese, he does have some regard for the rule of law, and you can see he's in conflict. I mean, I'm not saying that there's not a lot of bullshit this guy's doing, but just imagine, but once that starts breaking down more and more, and you see that go out the door, and I can only imagine if Anthony Albanese gets in, who's openly said he wants a social credit system coming in, where this is going to go. So, so getting part of a good awakened community where people who are like-minded in values, that's like your family, as Jesus would put it, or Buddha. That's your family. That's my family, not my natural family. I hardly see them. When I see them, I get okay with them. But like, you're my family. A lot of our global wealth people are my family. You know, that's what people need, and creating. And part of the war, if you're going to go to war, you've got to have a sanctuary or refuge or family to go back to when you've been wounded and you've been knocked around a bit and beaten around, and say, oh, someone needs to reassure me. And I need that. I was crying my eyes out 3 hours before this webinar. I'll tell you more about later on, but I saw John Thompson, a brilliant awakened psychologist, psychotherapist, to deal with the issues around the passing of Sammy 2.5 months ago. But I honestly thought I dealt with everything, and found there was a level of grief, which he said very few know about, which is called the loss of the dream. And he said to me, like, many people deal with the loss of the person, but they haven't yet released the loss of the dream. And the moment he said that, I just started crying, literally spontaneously. And I nodded my head and I said, you're right. And I went through this whole process of him to deal with that. And I said to him, people need to understand this, that, there's the grief of losing the society that you once knew. And then there's also the grief of losing the dream of where your life could now go. And I think young people are really struggling with that, the dream of travel, the dream of university, the dream of this. It's like, my dream's been shattered, and we've got to find a way to help these people see an alternate way,
Oh, I think that really honestly touched me, because I see that so much out in, the young people, the younger generation as well. And also just any age, really. There's so much loss out there, but let's have a look at the silver lining in all this, because there are so many good things that are coming out of this. And as you said, I remember I asked you a few days ago, Warren, I was like, when's this going to end? Are we going to come out of this? Because, we all have our moments. Don't tell me that you guys don't have a moment of like dropping into fear for a sec, because it happens to all of us. But it's really about how you get back to it. And then, you get back to your community, you make that phone call and you feel really lifted up again. You're like, yeah, okay, we can do this. So I just wanted to talk on, how do you get through those moments, Warren? Like, how do you, when you're feeling that fear, come back? And when you're feeling like alone, especially, I've got to mention as well, mental health issues are at an all new time high. Like, I don't know if anyone here in the chat has experienced, I've got a family member who is completely paralyzed, can't live his life, is not able to operate, right? So we need to lift these people up and try and keep them away from this system that's trying to kill them even more. So it's really, really difficult. So how do we deal with that, Warren, in our own life, especially if we feel isolated?
Yeah, look, this is why your team and your family that you've got is so important, and knowing your family and identity. And that's one of the reasons why, William and I were having a long talk, my son, because William just said, I can see that the breakdown of the church has left people without values, Dad, because he said, I can see that with people around me. And I'm like, yeah. I said, when I grew up, I had a lot of values, and I had mental health challenges. I had lots of stuff. The one thing that kept me going was my values and knowing my purpose and knowing my own connection with God and the way which I understand God. So when this whole thing happened, I didn't really lose anything. I just saw it as transforming, because my relationship, with my Heavenly Father, my Divine Mother, with my cosmic source, whatever that happens to be, is intact. I know who I am. I know why I'm here, to teach, to educate, to give back. I've got all that. I've got my team around me. I've got my people I can offload to when I need help. Today I had John Thompson, who I felt I just intuitively thought, I just haven't resolved all the process around Sammy, which doesn't make logical sense to me, but I don't feel like I have. And that's why I went and saw him. So the way you do it, you just got to get your therapists around you and your team members. But as Dr. Henry Cloud, a great psychologist, once said, he goes, if someone has a good sense of church, family, and community, they generally don't need a psychotherapist, because they'll get that from talking, like you know how to offload when you're feeling pain, Jazz. I mean, women are often good at that. I know how to do it. Like, I'll just talk to people. I'll say I'm struggling, or I'll ring up someone and say, I just need someone to talk to. I ring William sometimes. I ring my mum sometimes. I ring, Grace sometimes. I ring, I just go and have a chat with my son sometimes and go out with him. And I've got our church family as well who I talk to. When I was younger, I had that. So the number one thing is get connected with people who are like-minded, and people you're not like-minded with, as the Matrix said, if they're not aligned with your values, they're your enemies.
Yeah.
So my mum's not my enemy, but her values is my enemies. you know?
Mm. Yeah, and also let's talk about in this community of people, like people who are awake, people who aren't, getting the jab, people who really want to fight for the rights of our human rights and cause and the children. Not everybody in that community is your cup of tea. There's a lot of people out there that they may be awake, but they may not necessarily actually be your type of person as well. So it's okay as well to not have guilt, to not want to hang out with every single one, because I think it's really important as well what you just said, Warren, to actually align yourself with people who are going to bring the best out of you. Because when I first kind of woke up, I started to hang out with a lot of people, and it actually got me into a very fearful place. And I got quite depressed because I didn't see a future. And I thought, well, we're fucked. Sorry for the language, everybody. We're ruined. Humanity's done. But ever since I met a new group of people and I really started to educate myself and open my eyes up to a whole new world, I'm so excited about the future because I'm living in the present, and I believe that so much we can rise up to the occasion. We just need to all link arms, and we need to trust in one another that we can actually do it. And Phil said, I'm not excused from swearing. I'm sorry, Phil. We'll block you later. No jokes. I would never do that. But yeah, I really just feel that there are so many people as well who, like myself included, that felt like rallies was the only way. Like we could only do it if we have a sign against Mark McGowan or Brad Hazard. But really, it's about self-empowerment, and it's about getting back to your purpose and getting God back in your life and finding where you fit. Would you say that would be a fair point, Warren?
Yeah, it's just finding your identity. And I mean, I'm going through a bit of a process with that because I've been a little bit black and white on certain things. And even with my friend, who's a 19-year-old teenager, she helped me grow the other day because she's pretty awake and switched on. But I remember walking away thinking, she just said to me, look, I don't want to take this thing. I'm very awake to this. But she said, I will lose my clubs, my life, my everything. And so she's going to go with the Novavax when it comes out. But then I remember thinking to myself, you know what? It's better to find a way to help someone like her. So that's why we got Shazar, who's got detox protocols and that. And I said, well, look, I can put you under someone who can at least help you through a detox protocol to help you mitigate the effects. So I can't obviously stop all the effects necessarily, but it can mitigate them. And she was grateful. And I thought, that's another way we can serve and give back, finding ways that people who really aren't strong enough just yet to stand up against it, to at least mitigate the damage. And that for me is a big shift because, as you know, I was very black and white like on that, whereas I've changed now. I'm like, no, okay, if we're going to win our society, we've got to find a way for those who are awake but who are just not yet strong enough to stand their ground. And I mean, obviously it's best if you are, but for those who aren't, there need to be a way through for these people so they don't feel alienated, they don't feel isolated, they don't feel like, what do I do now? Does that mean I've failed because I've gone and taken this? And it's like, well, yeah, may not have been the ideal, but plan B is better than nothing. And at least if you're doing some mitigating effects, and you'll get stronger and things like that. So it's kind of like a process. That's where I'm at right now.
Yeah, I think that's really beautiful. I'm also the same. At the start, I used to see people wearing masks as slaves, and I was nasty. I was horrible out in public. And I'm at the point where I'm like, because I've never worn one, and I have reasons, well, medical reasons, and now I actually look at everyone out there, and I just smile, and I'm just so nice, and I'm normal, and it really has shifted. It's shifted the whole dynamic of it, and it's such it's a very self-empowering thing, and I've grown so much confidence from it. So I really encourage anyone here in that same position, try and change your outlook to how you look at those people, not as just sheep or as horrible people. Because as Warren, you just said, so many people, I would say over 70% who've taken it have done it because they've been coerced and they had so much to lose, and they had a family to provide for, bread to put on the table. So I think just a bit of love and compassion in 2022 and a bit of bridging between ourselves and you want to call them sheep. Anyone wants to call them sheep. I think it's really, really important to have a bit of compassion and empathy there as well.
Look, it is. It's just a way of fight. I mean, obviously, we want to teach people first and foremost to stand up in their strength. But for some, like you said, there's just got to be a secondary way through. And yeah, I mean, that's what I've been thinking about, compassion and finding a way to, we're to help people as much as we can, I mean, I've made my own choices and my sons have and others, but yeah, look, but the art of war as well is that we learn to fight and hit the real enemy, the energy, the whole thing. And like you
Yeah,
said, my approach is when I go out with people with masks, if people are respectful of me, I'm very respectful back.
exactly.
But I have this kind of look about me that I think people look at me sometimes and then they don't say anything because they know that I will bite back at them. You know, I remember even a little while ago I was driving and some guy obviously didn't like how slow I was going and drove up close to me and was making noises at me. And I stopped my car right up and he kind of had to slow down. As he's coming past me, I'm just pulling it, I'm yelling at him and just like absolutely like go to him. And then of course he looked at me and I did this disgusting looking face and go completely feral at him and he just drove off as quick as he could.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, I think you need to shock people at the moment. I mean, we're seeing people over here wear masks when they're by themselves in the car. So, people are really not very conscious, I guess, of their.
No, well, it kind of blows my mind just how little we've grown and how stupid we really are. And I'm realizing that the problem is when it's really stupid, it does affect us because we're driving around when most people are stupid. And we've got to learn to function in that society where by and large, it's like I told someone, it's like being the only healthy person in a leper colony. It's like that'd
Yeah.
be a very difficult thing to be. And yeah, like I mean, I like the meme I saw the other day. Wearing a mask alone in the car is like wearing a condom alone when you're in bed. I think that summarizes.
I think it summarizes it perfectly. It's just embarrassing. Yeah, and I just before we do kind of wrap up, if anyone has a specific question for this year for Warren and what's happening, and we'll just touch on what series we're going to be running. I guess let's not make light of it. This is war. It's war.
Totally.
It's like full on war. Like the other day, I went to the beach, Warren, and everyone, and I was like, oh, peace, finally. I get to be out in nature. And I'm not joking. I looked up, there was a massive plane, with those signs on the end of them saying, put your mask on, WA, mask up. And I was like, I started swearing. And then I was like, putting the thing, I'm like, you can't even leave us alone down at the beach, you psychopaths. And everyone on the beach is living their life, and I'm losing it, Italian blood rising up. And I thought, this is war on our minds, on our happiness, on our life, on the way we want to live. We live in Australia. This is meant to be a free country. And the reason I'm saying it is because let's not make light of the situation. They're going to come at us in every single angle. We're feeling it hard. Don't, like Warren, you do a lot of energy work. It's so important. Give yourself a bit of slack sometimes. Be kind to yourself. Sometimes you just want to have that hot chocolate or something, have it and just regroup. I find that really helps because it's quite intense.
Yeah, look, the basic, the art of war says to, appear weak when you're strong and appear strong when you're weak. And it talks about the importance of planning and being centered. The other thing about the art of war, I just want to throw in there, most people, I'm having people right now in WA devastated with the mandates that are coming with clubs and pubs. But I was like, it's been obvious for months it was going to come in. Yeah. And this is why most people end up in a mess. They don't plan for contingencies. And that's probably the art of war talks about plan while it is easy. So that's the number one thing that I'll encourage everyone. Plan while it is easy. So then, right now, you still can do a lot of planning around your money and finances to protect it. You won't be able to when they start moving towards the reset and start to restrict capital control and moving money out. They start limiting your right to do certain incomes unless you do certain things. Right now, you can still do all that. So this is a time to be getting yourself economically sovereign and self-sufficient and things like that. With your health, it's a bit harder now, but you still can, and I was getting mask exemptions way before anyone else. I was going and getting things ready and sorted out long before because I thought, hopefully I'm wrong on all this. It's a waste of time. But of course, now it's all hitting me. I'm covered. I'm ready for it all. So that's the biggest thing with the art of war. It says the importance of planning. The one who plans, who's patient, and who waits it out. And I'll give it to Bill Gates and the pandemic crew. They've been patient. They have been waiting this out. And they've taken their time and they've been systematic and they've been meticulous, with doing all this. And I do think they've been rushing it in the last little while. Yes. Which is kind of going to help a little bit. But to get to where they've got to by 2020, I mean, God, the patience they took to get there, Yeah. And it's worth learning from that.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I couldn't agree more. So I'll see if there's any particular questions for you. But otherwise, the Art of War series, how long are we going to be running that? That's going to be every Wednesday. So I highly encourage, please bring people along, send them the link. especially for those people who are feeling very vulnerable right now and that they don't have a sense of community or they're being the black sheep. Please get them on, because we need to encourage one another, and learning about how to get through this and navigate through this time is going to be really important for us all. So,
yeah, and keeping in mind deception too. Like, there's a lot of deception. Like, my experience, when people are in fear, they start making up all kinds of weird shit, just to basically help them cope. And so being accurate on information you're getting, there's a lot of stuff out there that's false in the internet. Even spiritually, I think there's a lot of deception out there right now. That's what I'm noticing, because people start trying to find ways to do it. Like, when Sammy passed, for example, I mean, I would love to have said, oh, she passed into light, to everlasting bliss. No, she actually didn't. The moment she passed away, she was so traumatized at everything that was going on, as you know. And we had to do a fair bit of work in our knowing our life after death work, myself, Grace, and many others, to help her process, to help her soul. And in the ancient Tibetan Book of the Dead, it talks about that people, when you die in the same state that you left the earth. So if you die in fear and trauma and absolute terror, you will go into that astral realm, an astral realm that aligns with you. It'll be much harder to deal with, because on earth you've got a body. So that's why Tibetan Book of the Dead, they would use scriptures, sacred readings to help souls pass through. So we had to do a fair bit of work to help Sammy transverse through all of that kind of stuff, which after today and some other days, we started to really see that now and help her soul transverse and move through in that kind of area. But, it's even dealing with this kind of stuff, escaping it isn't the answer either. Like, my mum always taught me, don't run from a problem, it'll always find you. And I mean, I had clients who admitted to me they ran to Austria or Germany to get away from the lockdowns, and then they got locked down there worse than they ever would have got in Australia. And I know a lot of clients who've run to Queensland to get away from Melbourne, and now Melbourne's opened up more and Queensland has shut down more. So you can't run from this. You just got to face it and deal with it and be brave. That's my comment.
Yeah, absolutely. So how long are you going to be running the Out of War series, Warren?
Until people get bored with it.
Okay, great. Yes.
Probably in the month of January at this stage, because I've actually got an amazing lady who's a client of mine who is a specialist in the medical field in the art of war. And so she said to me, I'll come and speak for you if you want. I said, oh, look, come and speak. And what we agreed is that if she speaks, as I said, she goes, I won't charge you, but I said, we'll ask people for donations and we'll put it into some women's empowerment charity to do with helping women who've been abused or, that kind of stuff, be empowered. So that's what we said we would do.
Yeah, awful. Yeah, look, let's get more empowered. Let's start this year strong. Let's stand together, make sure that you're joining us, and reach out if, you don't have anyone else, not a problem. Has anyone got any particular questions?
Yeah.
Let's have a look. We are in the series. It's great.
Someone's asked about someone who's passed in trauma, more links. Yeah, look, our Telegram group, City Awakening, we run a lot of, that's our awakening group. That's designed to awaken the spiritual consciousness of cities and help people activate. Because I honestly believe that the only thing that's going to get our society sorted out, like with Florida, is a strong, spiritual, awakened, spiritually conscious, well-centered community. Because if we get this centered, the governments will, by universal law, get centered. So one way or the other, we'll do it. So for both, I'll put the link of the Telegram group just in case anyone does want to get involved in our awakening and learn more about the spiritual stuff, because, yeah, that's something that I'm very, very passionate about. I know quite a lot of you, I've noticed here, are part of that. So I will just, give that right now. So that's for the City Awakening. So if anyone's interested, just let me know and you can join that.
Yeah, excellent. Also, Jackie was just asking, do you believe that rallies are a waste of time?
Nothing's a waste of time, but the only thing with a lot of rallies, look, I try and take a balanced perspective on laws of numbers. Like, once you start getting a critical mass at rallies, like say 10, 20% of the population, governments start listening, because generally if you multiply by about 5 or 6, the number, that's accurate. So 10%, you got more than 50% now starting to not like what's going on. That's the basic rule. So a lot of rallies, when people say, like Perth, there was like 60,000, I remember saying that doesn't mean anything, because Perth's got about over 2 million people. That's about 3% if you're lucky. That's not a critical mass. So as an example, the other problem with rallies, a lot of the time it's emotions. If if it was for community, like a lot of people go there for community, that's great, you know, because the great thing about rallies is like-minded people can meet, and they're almost like a kind of, you know, for some people, a form of community, a bit like what the church should be doing, but is not doing to awaken people. But, you know, rallies have their part in that. But to actually get change, a lot of the time for rallies, people go there for an emotional outburst. And then once the emotions die out, the grief hits in. And I think you're going to have many grief-stricken rally protest attenders by about February, March, you know, who are going to be very grief-stricken, you know, because of the truth of the loss of their society, of their dreams will hit them. And many of them will just give in, like they'll die or they'll just get sick or they'll go ahead and take the jab. So going to protest, if you're going to go to a rally, you really want to go centered. You want to be going for community. You want to be going for fellowship and meeting like-minded people. And, you know, thanks to the rallies, many great clients and many of you are here in this meeting today. So they do have a part. You just got to know what you're doing with them, why you're going there, and don't go anywhere with any false hopes or expectations. You know, that's the idea.
Yeah, I think that's beautiful. All right, well, I think we're going to wrap up tonight. Everyone's saying thank you so much. Thank you for jumping on. We will be back. Warren's going to be running this series as well, as I said, every Wednesday with The Art of War. You're more than welcome. If you haven't signed up for our newsletter, please do go to globalwealthclub.com and you'll be up to date with everything that we're posting. And we know that 2022 year is going to be a year we're going to need courage.
We will. And the Art of War series, one final comment, Jess, I'm going to make it quite topic-based as well. So next time we do it, I might say, let's focus on this topic. Like, you know, one might be, and we might take a quote from The Art of War, like appear weak when you're strong might be one, or, you know, do things when it's easy. So we'll do stuff like that to really help develop a mindset and learn how to fight back against psychic attacks. Like next week, for example, I'd love to do something about how to deal with psychic attacks, because you know what I mean by psychic attacks? People who actually, you know, you're in a room, like you're in a restaurant, and people are looking at you and not saying, and they even might be smiling, but you can feel the daggers, like you absolute, you know, who are you? Like, how dare you? Or how dare you not be masked up? You know, I'm wearing one. Why can't you? I mean, Novak Djokovic, I don't know if anyone saw that, but the psychic attacks against him, 85% in a poll were like, how dare he come into Australia? He should be forced. We should boo him. I mean, only Australia that would happen. But like, yeah, so those kind of psychic attacks, we've got to teach people to deal with those, because standing against the norm this year, you've got to get more of them. So you've got to be ready for them.
Yeah. Quickly, just Greg asked about wearing a mask. Did you see that one? Hang on.
Oh, yeah, just thank you and keeps walking.
Oh, yeah. Beautiful. Good job. All right. Well, thank you so much, everybody. Thanks, Warren, for your time once again. God bless you all, and we will see you very, very soon. Okay? Take care.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye. See you, Warren.
Bye.
To kick the habit that my mind is free.